Sports Talk 1240.
We've had kind of a spark of madness in the news system just recently, and I want to give a little bit of perspective on what's been happening from a little bit of an insider source, a little bit of an insider perspective, and also I'm going to be having someone on the phone who might be able to give us a little bit of insider perspective from the position of someone who's involved in the school system and involved with children, and might be able to help us out to understand a little bit of what's going on in both the minds of the officials who are in the school system and in the minds of just the parents who are having to deal with this horrible tragedy that we had happen just a few days ago now. We are still sort of trying to figure out exactly what happened. Of course, there was a bus crash. We all know that. There was a bus crash that happened on Thursday on Monday, I should say. A bus crash that happened on Monday. And we're all still trying to put the pieces together as to what led up to it. Now, we know what happened at the time of the bus crash, but leading up to it and some of the details after it are a little bit confusing. Now, the driver of that bus, we know he's the driver for a fact, but is he guilty of 5 counts of vehicular manslaughter? Is he guilty of reckless endangerment and reckless driving? That's for the court to decide. That's not for journalists to decide. That's up to the court. He's going to be appearing before the court on the 29th. That's just going to be to set things up. It's not going to be the end-all, be-all hearing. There's probably going to be a long process for that, and it'll most likely be happening next year. So we won't have the entirety of everything that we want to know until next year. And there are going to be videos that are going to come out, most likely, if the police choose to release those videos, of footage from inside the bus. That's something worth noting. And apparently there are audio recordings, too. That's something that someone on the police force, I believe, indicated, is that there were videos from inside the bus from a forward and rearward facing camera. And I want to point out something, too, that I don't normally point out, but the emergency response has been kind of amazing, actually. Just the amount of people who were there, who were available, who were helping. Just within minutes, it seemed, of the bus crash happening, everyone was there to help. Not just people in emergency crews, but people from the community were there to help. You had people from the school board. Interim Director Cupelli was there almost immediately, which was almost a little bit surprising. The bus coming from Woodmore Elementary, meaning it's very young children involved, so lots and lots of concern, obviously, and lots of tears shed over the 5 children who were killed in this bus crash. We say were killed because it's now a case of vehicular manslaughter. So when there's a death, it's a death. You know, when it's a natural thing or it's an accidental thing, it's a death. And when it's a killing, it's a killing. And these are very dark, harsh, cold terms to use, but they are the proper ones, and no disrespect is meant by them. That's something that needs to be understood by some people. Is you in news, you have to use sometimes cold, dark, hard language that you don't want to have to use, but that's just what you have to say. It's not a death, it's a killing. It's just a fact of the matter. Any university will tell you that. So it's hard, and it's not easy for us, but it's harder for you, I'm sure, to hear just all the details that have been pouring out. And we're still trying to piece together everything. So I want to run down what happened minute by minute and sort of give some perspective as to how the process works when you're gathering a breaking news story. So the first thing we heard was that there was a bus crash and that there were children involved, and it was on the way to drop off kids from school at Woodmore Elementary. That's not something that happens very often, but it's not something that you think of as a mass casualty incident. And then things started to take a turn for the worse. And we have someone on the phone right now who's going to help us to offer a little bit of perspective. Introduce yourself, please, caller.
Hey, this is Jay. I am a social worker who I have worked in the school system, and I am currently processing for the Tennessee Certified School Social Workers credentialing. So I just kind of wanted to share some thoughts.
So you have lots of experience working with children, and possibly more importantly in this case, working with parents of children too, correct?
Absolutely. I've spent years going into homes, working between the schools and families, and helping children broker resources and go through life challenges, kind of in the gap.
So
it's definitely something I've experienced.
So what kind of, how would you gauge a situation like this? Not necessarily in terms of urgency, but in terms of just how do you talk to parents about something like this after it's happened?
Ooh, that's a rough question. Real talk, anything like this is just going to be traumatic to anyone, to the families, to the parents, to other children. This is something that's definitely going to rock a community. And I'm not necessarily saying that you can't talk to parents about it, but this is definitely something that will require a community approach, in my opinion, because of how serious it is for all parties involved. And it's just all around a hard conversation to have, reaching out to the families. There is some protocol for emergency, response, who's doing the contacting, what is being said, what is being released, arrangements, supporting families with arrangements, post such a traumatic event. And usually what you'll find is you have a lot of groups who will come in and wrap around. You might find churches and things like that that'll come in and provide meal services. But again, all that is voluntary. That is not something that is written into the fabric, so to speak. That would just be kind of the community response. So again, the conversation with the family would need to be families would need to be a conversation with the community, just because everyone is affected. From the teachers, the janitors, to everybody is going to be experiencing just repercussions from said event. And working with the families, the best way to work with the families is create a network of community support.
And we just heard this morning, that there's going to be a benefit concert in Miller Plaza downtown on Sunday from 12 to 3 p.m. I just want to get that one out there. So that's a good example of something that brings the community together. And I guess you call it the healing process, sort of starts that up, right?
Absolutely. And it's a long road because, for a lot of us, who just experienced the event vicariously through watching it from the news or whatever, it's traumatizing for us, right? But we can return to a new normal, and it's a new normal. And that's tough.
It adds a whole new sort of understanding of, if you're not a parent, it sort of adds a whole new understanding of what it is to be a parent too, seeing the reaction that some of these people have had. It really opens your eyes to the hardships and some of the joy too of just being a parent. And it's really shocking sometimes, some of the things you see. Absolutely.
Especially in the world that we live in, at least, I don't have children of my own, but, in working very closely with the kids that I've had the opportunities to work with in the family context that I've had, going in these homes, becoming part of these groups, you start to see, there's nothing like a bond between parents and their children. And you want the best for your child. I mean, I have met parents who have done some pretty crazy things so that their children can be successful, whether it be fighting for the types of schools. We've talked about all those different issues, when it comes to zoning and vouchers and who's sitting where when we get to lunch, you know what I mean? And so for something like this is beyond devastating. Like, there are no words.
And I don't want to get a little bit, I don't want to get too political, but obviously politics does have a bit of a play in this, simply because of, who's involved. You have the school system, and you have the city council and the county commission, and now you have the NTSB, the police, the sheriff, TEMA, so there's going to be an air of politics about it. But without getting too political, what would you say, just from your perspective, may be done to prevent something like this from happening again?
Man, that is quite a question. Humbly, I would like to maybe put my 2 cents on the matter. I would definitely say, my hat goes off to all of those who are definitely in the process of having these conversations, because this is not going to be an easy road. There's definitely a lot of spotlight that's going to be on them, and a lot of high professionalism needs to be expected. But in my opinion, I would definitely say, looking at the issues that happen on a bus in general, outside of the worst case scenario, which we've seen, I can't tell you how many kids are kicked off the bus frequently, assaults, sexually inappropriate behaviors. I mean, there are so many other issues that happen regularly on the bus that I can only look at it from a bigger systemic picture and say, we really need to look at how we are, like the bus system really needs to be viewed as part of our system, and not just as transportation, but a part of the psychosocial, emotional development process in the lives of our children. So that would look like, I know we used to do bus monitors at one point, having responsible adults who are making sure that these children aren't assaulting each other or doing any other number of unruly behaviors. Making sure that our bus drivers and whoever the support staff are, because I would definitely lobby for support staff, are trained in behavior management. The same way a teacher is trained in classroom management and still needs support in doing that, a bus driver would need that support and that training. As far as, I know that there has been conversation about seatbelts, there's seatbelts on airplanes, but there aren't seatbelts on school buses.
Right.
Those are all just different conversations, but I think I would really want us to start looking at our bus system as part of that psychosocial development process and really put some intentional effort in management and behavior management and other things that could contribute to why there might be complications with the driving process.
And something that's worth noting, too, is that the bus driver was not necessarily, he was, but he wasn't an employee of the county, if that makes any sense. He was going through a contracting agency. How often does that kind of thing happen in the school system?
I can't speak for Hamilton County.
Sure.
But I can definitely say that, from what I've observed, that is a point of concern, because there's a difference, or there's a perceived difference in an employee being invested in their county with their benefits and things like that, and getting someone to do a job, if that makes any sense.
Right.
I don't want to speak negatively against any agencies or anything like that. But again, I think that just goes back to my first point. We need to consider the bus and that transportation piece, that morning and afternoon piece. It's like the bookends to the school day, as serious parts of the psychosocial development process for our kids. And if we do that, then that's going to inform how we choose our bus drivers, how they're trained, what they're trained, how the buses are maintained, what the regulations are for how, again, management and driving procedures. I mean, they're pretty good with that kind of stuff. I will give them that. But just looking again at ensuring that our bus drivers have the necessary investment, training, and support to be able to complete the job safely. Because I do not envy, I've talked with bus drivers, and I've heard horror stories of things that they've had to navigate through. Because, buses, I don't know if you've, heard of buses who've been late or that have turned around and come back to the school because of all the craziness that happens on a bus. I know school resource officers who've been pulled in. That's one of the things that when I was working in the school, the school resource officers would handle a lot. Unruly behavior on the bus, And so, again, I know I'm kind of roundaboutly answering your question, but it really just goes back into making sure that looking at the bus and that transportation system as, again, part of the curriculum, as part of the psychosocial development, as part of the way that we are training our future leaders to act and interact. And if we really realize that these parts of the things, the lunchrooms, the buses, the things that don't have the highest supervision, it just causes a strain on those who are responsible for the lives of our children. And we need to take that seriously, in my opinion.
So would you say maybe, and I'm not saying that this is the reason or even indicating that this may be a reason for what happened, but would you say possibly that bus drivers may be in an overstressed and overworked position?
I can't say, I can't say that. I can't say that. But I can say that there is it definitely is understandable to see the stress that comes from dealing with children who are rowdy and acting ways. And again, kids are kids. Like, let's not, expect our children to be drones of some sort.
Right.
But again, it feeds back into making sure that our bus personnel, our transportation personnel are are set up in a way that they can be successful in taking care of the lives of our kids.
Had you heard that, and I know you're out of town, so maybe some of the news may have slipped past you, but had you heard that the bus driver had just previously had his license revoked actually for failure to show insurance and had actually been in a wreck before in a school bus? Had you heard about that?
I did not. But here's my thing. Like, I feel bad because whenever this happens, we try to villainize the person who was responsible.
Yeah.
I've never been in that situation, right? Like, I've never had my license revoked for anything like that. But, you know, things happen. You know, you might forget your insurance card, or you might be low on funding, or you might be, you know, there's all kinds of reasons why. It's not like, you know, I don't know. This person could have been intentionally evading the law. But they could have just fallen into, you know, a paperwork snafu or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think this person intentionally was trying to kill people. I don't know that. You know, I'm not in this person's head. But, you know, that's usually, like, that's not why people become bus drivers. So, you know, I think that, in my opinion, you know, I think we need to be careful because we want why. You know, something like this happens, and we want a why, and we want someone to be responsible. You know, I think this person is going to have a hard road ahead. Just how, I mean, this is rough. And so just kind of being a little empathetic to that person, although it's hard to say that. I mean, I can't imagine that families are going to be like, oh, no, it's cool, you know. But I really think that we shouldn't seek to villainize him because we really don't know. We don't know what was said. I mean, we're trying to get that information, you know. And we have to remember, too, I'd like to throw this in there, this age group that we're dealing with, again, coming from my counseling perspective, these kids are in a really vulnerable place, right? So they will say anything. So if one kid is like, I heard that this guy was, you know, I need to be careful what I say, but, you know, like this terrible, terrible criminal who's part of a crazy organization that came from somewhere else and is wreaking havoc in America, you know, all the kids would be like, yeah, I heard that too. And I heard he was all these things, you know, and this is that age group that we're dealing with as well. So I'm not saying don't believe our kids, but I am saying that as adults, we really need to be careful as we're grieving, because grief does things to people. So as we're grieving, we need to make sure that we grieve healthily and we show our kids that, you know, in spite of a tragedy, we can still come together. And again, like we started with, focus on the community instead of victimizing and villainizing. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense, because there are a lot of things that are being thrown around, and we do have to be careful about that too. There are facts, there are things that have been said by parents, and there are things that we just don't know. And news media has to be extremely careful in classifying those things as those things in a highly, highly emotional time. You have to be fair to all parties.
And my thing is this too. I mean, with the kids in this community, this is something that's going to stick with them forever. So my caution to the media would be, realize that these children are still coming back home from school or whatever on the rest of these days, you know, and their parents have the news on. The parents are watching the news, you know, whatever. These kids are watching themselves or their situation portrayed as what you, and you may not ever speak on, but this changes worldview and their understanding of how things work. So we really, really need to be careful how we are portraying this, knowing that this is a very good, like that age, kindergarten to 5th grade, like that age group is really vulnerable. And so we need to make sure that they are supported from what they see and what they hear as well, because if they hear a lot of negativity and a lot of fear, then they're going to become negative and fearful. And it's already a scary, trying time. Does that make sense?
It makes absolutely a lot of sense. And Jay, I think that's a good note to end on. That's something we all need to remember. Jay, thank you for joining us and adding us, giving us a little bit of perspective.
Appreciate you. Take care. Thank you.
You too. So that's a little bit of perspective from another side you may not have heard, because we all need to learn something. If not a positive lesson, the negative lessons too can be learned from this. But something that has to be remembered is there are going to be a lot of kids who are going to be terrified of driving or riding in the bus for a long, long time. Because remember, these are children, right? These are children who have gone through or have seen other kids who they know go through a horrible event that most of us have never even come close to in terms of dealing with, especially at that young age where the mind is very malleable, the mind is very easily shaped, which I guess is repeating myself, but you have to be careful about how you word things. And in news media, that's a hard thing to do. And we have a responsibility to tell people what happened, as it happened, how it happened, and what speculation, what isn't speculation, what are facts, what's alleged. We have a responsibility to that. And as parents, there's a responsibility to explain things to children, to explain, this is what just happened, and it's unlikely to happen to you. It probably won't. It most likely won't. But this is something that can indeed happen and did to a very unfortunate group of children. And we're going to continue to give you more coverage of this, obviously, as the situation unfolds. Right now, I don't think we're going to get a whole lot of new information until the trial actually happens, which the first day of Mr. Walker's court appearance is November the 29th. So we will learn a little bit more detail on November the 29th. There are allegations, and it's been said by the police in an affidavit, that the bus driver was driving, that's Jonathan we're talking about, was driving too quickly. They say speed is a major factor in what caused this crash, and there have been complaints from neighbors in that neighborhood on Talley Road saying, in Brainerd, that they see him driving too quickly. One woman said on television that she was stopped at a stoplight and had to slam on her brakes because she was almost hit by a bus driver. Now, are these exaggerations? I can't say for certain. But were they statements made by real people in our community? Yes, they were. And so they need to be talked about. Because, as some have pointed out, what some consider the little people, these are parents we're talking about, are being widely ignored and have been for a long time. And it's only now we're starting to pay attention to some of the complaints and concerns that a lot of parents have had for a really long time. And these are people who should not be ignored. These are people who we should listen to and give credence to with any complaint they should ever possibly have against the system. We need to hear it and evaluate it. And it's unfortunate that it's now we're starting to bring attention to that. Why does it have to be now after a massive tragedy that we start looking at the possible problem that may be occurring with school bus drivers? It shouldn't be. But it takes a hard lesson sometimes to learn that there are things that need to be given attention that simply have not been. And it kills me that this is what is causing this attention to be given, but it's a good thing it's being given nonetheless. A horrible tragedy happened on Monday. We're continuing to give you coverage of all the details as they've come out here on Nooga Radio AM 1240 and NoogaRadio.com. I want to thank Jay for joining us and giving us a little bit of perhaps insider perspective maybe on what exactly is going on and the mentality that some of the social workers and people who work in city and county government are going to have now. The schools generally fall under county jurisdiction, and so there's going to be a lot of statements from County Mayor Jim Coppinger we're expecting. There are going to be a lot more news conferences as soon as the trial goes underway. You're going to hear from Neil Pinkston, who's the prosecutor, and I want to talk in a little bit about misinformation and disinformation and how that's been affecting how we've been seeing what's been happening here in our area. AM 1240 Nooga Radio.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Fox News Talk 1240.
Cash, 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 and more cash. Hey, where do you think Santa shops? Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. He made a special stop to tell Rick, slash those prices 50 to 70%. Ooh, ho, ho. That's right. Get 50 to 70% off right now for Christmas at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Even Rick's not going to say no to Santa. No, no, no. Don't wait till after Christmas. It'll be way too late. Get your cash, cash, cash right now for your gold, your silver, your diamonds, and jewelry. And save 50 to 70% off. On a $100 item, it's only $30. On a $1,000 item, $300. Has Rick gone mad?
Well, maybe a little.
No, we think he's just Christmassy. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. 50% off right now. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, East Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. You know where it is. Hey, is that Santa? Cash, 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 and more cash.
Is your career taking you where you want to go? If not, talk to Covenant Group Insurance, especially if you like helping people. Call and learn how you can work for yourself, but not by yourself. Intense but free training, plus a fantastic lead program, plus office support equals your success, your prosperity. Gross at least $75,000 your first year selling insurance. Call Steve or Jada for a confidential interview. That's 855-8484. Maybe the most important call you make all year. Looking for a dream home, or maybe you're just a first-time home buyer? Let an agent get you started today on your house search. If you're a real estate agent looking for a change, see what Exit can do for you. The agents at Exit Realty Scenic City are confident they can sell your house. They can do it in 99 days or less. If no one works harder for you than agents at Exit Realty Scenic City, licensed in Tennessee and Georgia. Exit sells quickly all types of commercial and residential properties and vacant land. Looking for a dream home, or maybe you're just a first-time home buyer? Let an agent get you started today on your house search. If you're a real estate agent looking for a change, see what Exit can do for you. Training, technology, branding, culture, and financial freedom. Again, Exit Realty Scenic City. Call 423-551-EXIT to learn more. Call 423-551-EXIT and learn more.
Terms and restrictions may apply.
We're at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Yes, ma'am. 2 orders of nachos with beef and beans and 2 beers. Chattanooga loves its Amigos restaurants, but the Amigos in Hickson has something extra. NCAA, the week's big game. How about a house wine? Really good. Big name beers. Just tell Maria what you want. And here at Amigos, margaritas are popular. And it's only $3 a day. If you come here on a game day, Saturday, a Natty Light is only $2.25. Here at Amigos, just during NCAA, Natty Light, $2.25. Amigos Mexican Restaurant in Hickson. The happy hour is 3 to 9 today and every day. I'd say the atmosphere is festive. Look at that huge TV. It's like being amid the fans under a bright sun, but without all the heat. Stay cool. Quench your thirst. Amigos, between the Staples and Hobby Lobby. Take the table next to mine and enjoy the great NCAA game with friend or family here at the Cantina at Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Okay, it's starting.
Listen up, y'all. Ben Phillips, Home Rate Mortgage, 805-9100. I'm in the business of saving people money. And if you want to save money, pick that cell phone up right now, 805-9100. I received a call that I won't forget. The guy is a Chattanooga police officer who served our great country in the Air Force. A true American hero. Our hero is renting, which costs too much for a space too small. We helped him achieve the American dream. And the best part is this. He purchased a $180,000 home with 0 down. His payment is $200 less than what his rent was. And now he has a safe place with more space to raise his family. It's easy, and you can do it too. It just takes 10 minutes and 1 phone call. 805-9100. Turn a house into a home.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Nooga Radio News. Russell Stroud reporting. Questions are being raised about the school bus driver, Jonathan Walker, who the police say was driving the bus when it flipped and killed 5 children, critically injuring 6, and leaving many more in the hospital. According to state records, the driver had already had his license revoked once for failure to show insurance and had been involved in a wreck involving the bus before. Another question being raised is, would seatbelts inside that bus have saved lives? The NTSB recommends lap and shoulder safety belts, but wouldn't comment specifically on this case. We're awaiting video footage from inside the bus to be released by the police. A Chattanooga man has been sentenced to 5 years in prison after police found 59.4 grams of crack cocaine and other drugs inside his car, along with a large amount of cash. And firefighters from Florida are going to be heading home after assisting those in Tennessee put out the wildfires here that have been ravaging the countryside for weeks. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on. AM 1240 Nooga Radio. Remember to get a tag at the Chick-fil-A in Northgate Mall and make a child's dream come true.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect some clouds, but comfortably mild out there through your afternoon. Highs warming into the mid and upper 60s. Could see a late shower tonight. A few more scattered showers will pass through. Lows only around 50. Morning clouds, but pleasant Thanksgiving Day. Highs back into the upper 60s. More sunshine continued mild through Friday. Unbelievable but true. Right now, get 3 pancakes for 89 cents at Burger King. 3 hot golden pancakes, just 89 cents, only at Burger King for a limited time. Restrictions apply. And I'm Smart 12's Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
The National Transportation Safety Board recommends that children be strapped in with seatbelts in school buses. And I understand that it's not possible to transition every bus in every county and every school system over to the latest and greatest technologies that the world has to offer, right? That technological companies have to offer, that school bus companies can retrofit your buses with. But now it's really something that should be looked at. And a question that is possibly going to be answered soon, maybe if the NTSB does computer models, is would safety belts have changed anything in what happened on Monday? Well, we don't know for sure right now. The NTSB wouldn't comment on that, but I have a page pulled up here, ntsb.gov/safety/pages/schoolbuses.aspx, and it's pretty clear actually in what the NTSB, that's National Transportation Safety Board, expects from those who are in a school bus. The companies which run school buses are recommended to have these changes made. And it says this in part: school buses use a unique technology called compartmentalization, a passive occupant protection system. School bus seats made with an energy-absorbing steel inner structure and high padded steel backs are secured to the school bus floor. Students are protected within the seating compartment, much like eggs in a carton. Although school buses are extremely safe, they say, we have investigated school bus crashes in which children were injured and even killed, they say. And again, this is from the past. This is not from recently. These were typically side impact crashes or high-speed rollovers, which sounds familiar, right? That's what just happened on Monday. In these accidents, compartmentalization was not enough to prevent all injuries. For some of the children involved, and note this, a seatbelt could have lessened their injuries or even saved their lives. As a result of our school bus crash investigations, we believe, and I have recommended, it says, that when investing in new school buses, the purchased vehicles should provide children with the best protection available, which includes 3-point seatbelts, much like the ones that we all see in our own school buses, our own cars, right? Every car has a 3-point seatbelt, unless it's made in 1956. It's going to have one. It's the seatbelt that we're all used to. So why don't school buses have them? Shouldn't that have been a standard feature since at least the late 1970s, right? Why not? Well, there's a whole lot of theory. There's a whole lot of videos about why there's not a seatbelt in modern yellow school buses, but that doesn't really matter, does it? The question that we should be asking is, can we make this change? Can we afford to make this change? And should we make this change? Now, I'm not one who's going to shill for the feds very often, but I will say the National Transportation Safety Board does a lot of research and has conducted a lot of studies on how cars can be made safe. And a school bus is a vehicle. It's on the National Transportation Safety Board's watch list of different vehicles that they look after. And they have a YouTube channel where they have animations of school bus crashes and different studies of them. So obviously the NTSB puts a lot of work into studying how school bus crashes work, because nobody wants to see children hurt unless you're some kind of psychopath. Nobody wants to see school buses crashing and children hurt. So how can we minimize these damages? How can we minimize children being injured? That's something you never want to see. Well, it appears that you add a seatbelt, because again, the NTSB says in high-speed rollovers or side impact crashes, which is what we saw, seatbelts could have minimized or even completely eliminated the injuries that children had. And I'm going to be a little bit gruesome here, and forgive me, please, if you're sensitive. Maybe tune over to some easy listening music or something. And I don't say that to be disparaging, but this is something that needs to be said, okay? I have seen videos of school bus crashes where they roll over on their sides, they flip over. I've seen hundreds of these videos, not hundreds, but tens of these videos. I've seen quite a few. Not because I go hunting them and you know, I like watching them. It's just something that safety has always sort of interested me, and car crashes have always been something that sort of interested me. It's just something that I look into sometimes to wonder how they work and the operations of different safety mechanisms that are put into place in cars. You know, cars are very safe nowadays. You can get into a crash at 70 miles per hour and walk away without injury some of the time. It's not like the 1960s anymore where cars are solid steel and you crash and horrible things happen to you. It's not like that anymore. But why is it that way, it seems, with the vehicles which carry our most sensitive cargo, children? Why? Well, in the one video I saw, is a school bus which flipped over. And you know how it is when you have, I think of a water bottle, right? When you have a water bottle and you're moving it along and then you suddenly stop it. What happens to the liquid inside that water bottle? It all rushes to the front. Well, that's exactly what happened in this particular school bus crash. All the kids flew to the front because they were not wearing safety belts. They were not wearing seat belts. And that's why every government agency ever and every company ever, every car company ever has recommended that when you're driving your car, you wear your seatbelt. And I know a lot of people don't, and that's their choice. If you're an adult, that's your choice to make. But when we're talking about kids, you can't take risks with kids. And you especially can't take risks with other people's kids. Because we're not just talking about you doing some dangerous stunt with little Jimmy, your son. You know, that's different. We're talking about dangerous stunts potentially being done with other people's children and a driver who may not be fully aware of the situation that's happening around him. I mean, we don't know exactly what happened with Jonathan Walker. We don't. We don't know everything right now. So I'm not making any accusation or anything against him. That's for the district attorney to do, and that's for the courts to decide. That's not my place. But why wasn't there more training? Why wasn't there better training? Why weren't there safety belts? We've got a caller on the line. Caller, tell me what's on your mind.
Hey, Russell, great show. Appreciate all the comments. One comment I want to make for the listener is that focusing on a double standard. Here's the state which regulates commerce and regulates all drivers, that would be people like you and me, requires that we have seatbelts and strictly enforces it if we're stopped for some other cause. Drivers, the seatbelt can't be a primary cause for a stop, but if you're stopped for something else by a state officer enforcing a state law, then he can enforce the seatbelt rule against you as a private driver with a driver's license. And yet here we have a school bus with what can hold 50 or 60 children. How many can a bus hold?
I believe there were 32 on this particular bus. Total cargo, I don't know.
Right. Well, maybe toward 50, and no one's restrained. And so here we have the state's precious cargo, these children who are compulsory clients of its factory school system, not protected from the hazards of the road against which the private driver is protected. Right. The private driver is enforced on the seatbelt rule, but not the state's own drivers under contract and the state's own precious cargo, these school children. Listen, I'll get off the phone.
Okay, thank you. And something worth noting, too, and thank you for that comment, very useful. I'm pretty sure, and I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that school bus drivers are wearing seatbelts. It might strike you as a little bit odd, right? The driver is protected, but the children aren't? What sense does that make? Now, of course the driver should be protected, but shouldn't the children be too? What's the reasoning behind this? This seems like, and I'm not throwing accusations at anyone in the county, the state, because I don't think anyone in our area, in our county, in our state, in our city wants to see children hurt. I don't believe that of them. No matter what you may say about a lot of the political motivations of anyone in our city, anyone in our county, and we've had a lot of disagreements with a lot of people in the city and county, I know for a fact none of them want to see children injured. Right? Like, we've had disagreements maybe with Mayor Andy Berg, but he doesn't want to see children injured because he's not an evil guy. He's not an evil person, right? We have political disagreements, but you're not an evil person. You know, there are a lot of people in this city, in this county, who we disagree with politically, and that's fine, but none of them want to see children injured. So it raises the question, because we know that's true, why haven't there been changes made beforehand? And again, it's a shame, it's ridiculous that this is what makes us ask the questions. It takes a tragedy for some reason to make us ask questions about safety in school buses. Why weren't people raising questions like this before? And this is a failing on our part too, as media. Why weren't we raising a stink about this? We've known that this is the case for a long time. Why haven't we raised questions about it? And it's an interesting point the caller made. If you get pulled over for, say, speeding or what have you, if you get pulled over, or maybe it's even something that's not wrong, it's just, say, your registration on your car is out of date. And that's not really something that makes you a bad guy. You're not even really doing a moving violation. You're not really, harming anyone by having out-of-date registration. You're only harming, the state, whatever. But picture that. You get pulled over for invalid registration, maybe, whatever. You're out of date. It says April on the little sticker and it's already October, whatever. You get pulled over for that. And in the process of that, maybe you forgot to fasten your seatbelt because you grew up in the old days when people didn't really wear seatbelts, so you just don't. You figure, I don't need a seatbelt. I'm an adult. I'll make my own decisions. I'm not going to let the nanny state tell me what to do. Maybe you have that mentality, and that's all right. But when the policeman sees you're not wearing a seatbelt, guess what? You got a ticket. And now you're going to pay a fine. You can appear in court and argue against it, but the judge is always going to say, well, you weren't wearing a seatbelt, and you admit to not wearing a seatbelt, so, you're going to have to be fined, going to have to fine you for it. That's just how it is. Why is that the case for you, the driver on the road, the driver on the street, the guy who's going from point A to point B to maybe see his family right now for Thanksgiving? Why is that the case for you? But children, we don't really care about them. Or if that's not the case, then we don't really think too much about their safety when it comes to seatbelts. Or maybe it's an issue of cost. It costs too much to protect our kids. That's what it is. It costs just a little bit too much. It's not in our budget right now to protect children. I've seen comments on Facebook, and Facebook's not the best place to look for intelligent discourse, but I saw some interesting comments on Facebook, particularly in a post that we made from Nooganomics.com, David Tulis' website, where he had posted a story about the bus driver and the possibility of having seatbelts in your car, and why don't we have them on our bus? And he was talking about this, and one commenter said, I think seatbelts would just be better cause for children to stay on buses longer because you have to do training and they're strapped in for a longer period of time. And maybe the school bus driver has to go back and fix them. Those are all questions that are going to be answered, of course, but isn't it worth it? Isn't it worth it to protect our kids? Would you want your child to not be strapped in the back seat? And if you get in an accident, maybe you slam on the brakes and your kid goes flying forward into the dashboard? That doesn't seem right, does it? So why should that be the case with children on the bus, right? Why should that be the case? I don't understand. And again, I know that our city officials and our county officials and anyone in office right now doesn't want to see harm done to any children. We've seen that from the outpouring that has happened after this tragedy that we've had on Monday. So now is the time, and it's sad that now has to be the time, but now is the time to make changes. What changes can we make? And I'm glad that we're not the only ones making an issue out of this. I'm really glad that Nooga Radio AM 1240 is not the only entity that's making an issue out of this, because I want to give credit where credit is due. There have been other news agencies here locally but doing an excellent job questioning officials about this. Why aren't there seatbelts in our school buses? Why aren't there? Why not? Don't you want to protect our children? Don't you? I mean, we know you do. So why don't you put some seatbelts on the school buses? Yeah, it's going to cost money. Yeah, it's going to be expensive, but surely money can be made available. Is there not a National Transportation Safety Board? You can ask for a grant. You can ask for a grant maybe from Tennessee's TDOT, right? The Department of Transportation can raise money. A fundraiser could raise money, right? There's a good organic local economy solution. Get a fundraiser going to put seatbelts on the school buses. I'm certain, I am absolutely certain, if you put out a fundraiser and publicized it, and I'll publicize it myself free of charge. If you put out a publication or an event, a drive to raise money to put seatbelts on every school bus in Hamilton County, I guarantee you could raise that money, no problem. You'd have wealthy donors. You'd have organizations giving money. You get sponsors. You get free advertising. We give you advertising for free for certain. So why hasn't that happened yet? It could. It easily could, but it hasn't yet. And I know this is way too early to be talking about that in terms of why hasn't it happened yet. It's way too early. But my question is, why hasn't it happened before? Why hasn't it happened before the crash happened? Why does it have to take a tragedy to make us learn the lesson that our children should be safe? Children should be safe. That should be the first thing we're thinking of when we're sending our kids off to government school. They need to be safe. It's a failing perhaps for everyone that we haven't thought about this before, or at least haven't made a big enough issue out of it. Because we haven't. Maybe it's a failing for everyone. But no matter what it is, it's something that we can fix now. Yes, maybe it's a sin in the past that we haven't fixed it, but we can fix it now. We have an opportunity, a golden opportunity. Everyone's mind is on it. We need to protect our children. It's the next generation, right? It's the people who are going to be replacing you and me. The people who are going to be building our city in 30 years. The people who are going to be running for office in 30 years. The people who are going to be possibly the president in 30 more years. maybe not, but possibly the president in 30 more years. There even is that office anymore. The Senate, right? The city council, the county commission, the school board, right? Future school board members. Don't we need to protect them? Don't we need to protect future customers, shop owners, regular people, walkers, pedestrians, drivers, school bus drivers, teachers? Don't we need to protect all these future people who could become that? And even if not, we need to protect them anyway, right? Even if they're going to move somewhere else to New York City and make a life there, we need to protect them now because it's our responsibility. Now, you can make arguments about government schooling. You can make arguments about, oh, they shouldn't be in that system in the first place. And yeah, I recognize that, right? I recognize that there's an inherent problem with the schooling system we have today. And this is not to blame the teachers or the school board or really anyone on our level. But there are issues that should be raised with that. But that's not the question right now. The question right now is how can we make our kids safe? And I think the best way right now is to evaluate the mode of transportation. The mode of transportation. Look at this from a cold-hearted engineer standpoint, right? Ignore emotion right now. Look at school buses. Ignore emotion. Look at school buses right now and answer the question, would that be safe if it came to a sudden stop? And I think even without emotion, without all the stigma that we're looking at right now, without all of that, I believe unequivocally the answer would be yes. We need to implement further measures to protect people on these school buses. And it's not just the kids too, the driver as well. The driver's probably not as well protected as he could be. Now, what's going to happen with the criminal investigation into Jonathan A. Walker, we don't know right now. The court date is set for the 29th of November, and that's just the first court date. That's just the first hearing where he's going to plead guilty or not guilty to the charges pressed against him, and then we'll move on from there. And I predict he's going to plead not guilty to 5 counts of vehicular homicide. I predict he's going to plead not guilty to that. So far as reckless driving, I don't know. So far as reckless endangerment, I don't know. Possibly to reckless endangerment and reckless driving. But as far as vehicular homicide, 5 counts, I predict he's probably going to plead not guilty to that. So we're going to have a long trial that's going to go on for a long time. And it's going to be covered by us, I guarantee you that. But it's going to be a long and hard fight, especially for the parents, because parents need justice. This is an incredibly emotional time for everyone, for people in news media, especially for the parents and the families. This is an incredibly emotional time. And it's not my place to tell people how they should operate, but something that I've noticed here is, and you know, forgive me for being a little bit out of line here, but something that I've noticed is something David Tulis pointed out, the state is really the one raising the complaint. You know, the parents aren't really the ones pressing charges. It's actually the state. And you can't blame Neil Pinkston for doing what he's doing. It's his job. You know, he is the prosecutor, the district attorney. So he's going to do what he's going to do. But it seems a little bit odd that the charges are being pressed by the state and not by the individuals who have actually been damaged. The state was not damaged here. You might say county property was, but the state was not damaged here. The parents were. So why aren't the parents the one pressing the charges with their individual attorneys? It seems a little bit strange. I don't know. And I wonder if there's going to be further action afterwards, too, like we saw earlier with other complaints with the school system. I wonder if there's going to be further complaints about that. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. This is Nooga Radio, AM 1240, NoogaRadio.com. Check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. We're also on the TuneIn Radio app. You know, now's not really the time for self-promotion. We're sort of trying to wrap up in our minds, especially getting into Thanksgiving. This is such a difficult time now for so many people, trying to cover everything and everything that's happened, and to be as unbiased and to be as neutral as possible with everything you point out. And it's not easy to do with a case like this. If you remember the Udawal rape case, it was incredibly hard to be neutral and to be fair and balanced and to be a good news source at that point. It's not easy. And that's not saying, oh, look at me, I'm such a good reporter. I'm just saying it's not easy. All the news media here in our area has had to deal with this. And thank your first responders. Another thing I have to say. This is Thanksgiving season, right? Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. A lot of people are going through a extremely difficult time right now. Thank your first responders. Thank the people who went out there to help. Lots of people, neighbors as well, who are in that area who rushed to help. This shows, I think, a perfect example of why Chattanooga is a great city. And I'm getting a little bit emotional thinking about it, but Chattanooga really is a great city. It's It's an amazing place to live, and I think that was shown by the outpouring of help. All the people who rushed to Blood Assurance. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. All the people who rushed to Blood Assurance to help those people out. The call that went out for people who had O negative blood type, and they all rushed to Blood Assurance to give blood. The lines were out the door the day the crash happened. The night the crash happened, there were lines going out the door at Blood Assurance at 7 o'clock at night. That shows you something about our city. That shows you something about our community. We are a strong people in Chattanooga. They say Chattanooga's strong for a good reason. We are Nooga strong. Showed that just on Monday. We really showed that. Chattanooga is a strong community. We look out for each other. In times like these, we ignore politics. We ignore stigma. We look at people. People matter. And I think we showed that wonderfully here. And thanks to all the first responders who helped, the neighbors, and prayers for all the families who are involved, who are affected. This is Nooga Radio, AM 1240, NoogaRadio.com. You can get us on our website, NoogaRadio.com, and on Facebook. We're on Facebook, Hot News Talk Radio on Facebook, and on Twitter. Colin Cowherd coming up next. Happy Thanksgiving.
Here's what advertisers are saying about AM 1240. Hot News Talk